And what was your reaction when you got the physical letter?
Scared. Didn't think it was real. I'm horrified by it.
That's me interviewing a woman in British Columbia who received a letter stating that the property she owns may be in jeopardy in what has been described as the greatest attack on property rights in Canadian history. You may have heard of the Cowichan decision in British Columbia, where a judge ruled that an Indigenous tribe can have a legal claim to land that is privately owned by Canadians, raising fears about the future of property rights. But this story is much bigger than it first appears, because this case is just the beginning, and what comes next could have major consequences for property rights across Canada, and it will change them forever. My name is Elie, I'm a journalist, and I've been involved in Canadian politics for the last decade. And recently, I traveled to British Columbia to investigate the Cowichan property rights crisis. I spoke to residents directly affected by the court decision, as well as multiple lawyers and politicians. And in doing so, I realized that this is a far bigger issue than what Canadians have been made to believe by the media.
It's unprecedented.
That's all very concerning. This premier is trying to keep things from the public.
This is a very serious situation.
That's not good for British Columbia, and it certainly isn't good for the country.
And be sure to watch until the end for a recent development that could have enormous implications for where the story goes next.
We all should be screaming our heads off. We should all be in the streets.
But before we get to all of this, be sure you are subscribed, as up to 80% of my viewers are not subscribed. It takes just a second to subscribe, and it's free to do so, but it goes a long way. Hype and like the video, hit the notification bell, and consider getting a paid channel membership for less than $5 a month, because I'm one of the only journalists left in this country that refuses to take subsidies from the federal government.
Journalism and commentary 1 year anniversary.
I don't believe journalism being funded by the government is the solution.
You have to rebuild the foundation. You have to retell the stories.
Market conservative
Other news that actually matters.
I hence wanted to ask. I think they should answer their questions, especially if they're politically charged with. Part 1, when your private property is in jeopardy. Before we go any further, here is a timeline of what happened and how a court ruling in British Columbia has sparked a national crisis on property rights. In 2014, the Cowichan tribes, which is an Indigenous community in British Columbia, filed a lawsuit seeking declarations of Aboriginal title over approximately 1,846 acres of land in the city of Richmond, as well as an Aboriginal right to fish for food on the south arm of the Fraser River. The trial lasted 513 days. That included hearings spanning over 11 years, making it the longest trial in Canadian history. Then on August 7, 2025, the Supreme Court of British Columbia issued its judgment in this Cowichan Tribes v. Canada court case. The court decided that Indigenous land rights existed first before governments began granting private ownership of land, and therefore those Indigenous rights may carry greater legal weight than private property rights. This immediately raised concerns because some of the land that this court case affected is land that is owned by homeowners and businesses. Then on August 11th, the BC government announced that it disagreed strongly with the decision and that it would be filing an appeal and seeking a stay on the case. And in October 2025, Richmond, BC property owners began receiving letters informing them that their land ownership may be in jeopardy. Now, the Cowichan tribes have said that they are not seeking to claim private property, including private homes. Our investigation doesn't begin in Richmond, but rather in Delta, British Columbia, a city located south of both Richmond and Vancouver. There, I met with Angela Smith, who owns a condo in the part of Richmond affected by the Cowichan land claim. And in October of last year, she received a letter informing her that the condo that she purchased as an investment property and that she hopes to retire in, well, that ownership may be in jeopardy.
So this letter was literally hand-delivered. Somebody came in a car, gave it to me, and I read it, and I was like in absolute shock. And then you find out it is real when you call the city and find out that it is real. So basically is what it's done is paralyzed this whole, it is literally paralyzed. So our condo unit is right in here in Richmond. That's Steveston Highway, and that's our condo unit. Now, so what that's done is made it very difficult for people to sell, very difficult for people to remortgage if they have a mortgage, because nobody's clear on who owns what now. So then we had, then they called a huge meeting with the city of Richmond, which we all went to, which is this booklet here. I think it was that we got. I'm not sure if I got that at this time or that time. But yeah, everybody turned up. The mayor was said it's bad news. It's not good. We could be in court. We could be in litigation for 10 years, basically. And, I'm very grateful that is not my home. I can ride this out. But what if you were a young family that bought in there? Because that unit there, those units I think we bought it brand new, so 13 to 14 years old. They knew about this back when we all purchased. They knew all about this land claim. Nothing was revealed. Nothing was told. Like, they disclosed nothing. And when we went to the meeting in Richmond, they told us that it was up to the Cowichan band to notify us.
So you feel like you've been let down by the government. The politicians here have been incompetent.
Yes.
This is very serious business. Very serious. Because if this goes through and they say, and the Cowichan win, every land title in BC will be taken over by some band.
How do you feel like you invested in this so clearly, like hundreds of thousands of dollars, and suddenly it's being declared that this may not even be your land anymore? How do you feel as someone who's got quite a stake in this?
Well, I probably have a very different opinion than maybe you, but I am a born-again Christian, so I honestly don't worry about it. This is not my home. This is not where I'm going to spend the rest of my life, is on this planet. So in my opinion, God's word tells me to take each day as it comes, don't worry about things, and at the end, it's all going to work out how it's going to work out. And I don't want to lose an ounce of my life worrying about this stupid stuff, because all that does is rob each and every citizen of their joy for today, right? So yes, it concerns me. I'm horrified by it, what it's doing to other people. But for me, I have a different outlook on what that looks like. And at the end of the day, like I said, I am grateful that is just a rental property for me. So that is not if I don't get anything out of it, my life is not really going to change. Will I be out hundreds of thousands of dollars? Yes. But I still have my health, still have my family, and I still have my home that I live in. But that's not the same for most people.
Yes, that's for other people. That's definitely. Have you heard from other people that are in a very different situation, that actually it is their home, and what have they told you?
No, the only thing that we've all seen is what that fellow, he has a farm that further down on the property line here, and yeah, the bank wouldn't cover his mortgage. Yeah, he went to apply, and they said, well, they don't know who's backing it. Like, who owns it? The Cowichan, or do you own it? And yet they all want you to pay your property taxes and keep maintaining it.
Yes.
They want you to keep doing what you need to do as a taxpayer, which we're doing, but no answers. And so then they give you this little, they give you that at the meeting. It says nothing.
landclaimscanada.com.
Yeah, tells you nothing. It's the same thing that it says from the beginning. We are in talks with legal counsel, blah, and nothing changes. Yep.
The letter that you have here from the city of Richmond, did you get that in the mail? How was this given to you?
Nope. Hand delivered. So somebody's been paid to drive around to every single land owner in that area to be given one of these letters.
And what was your reaction when you got the physical letter?
Scared. And didn't think it was real. And I immediately posted it on my Facebook page saying, wake up, world, wake up. The things that were being said was, I hate people like you. You're just fear-mongering us. What are you doing? They didn't think it was real either. They're like, that is so untrue. Why would you think that the indigenous people are trying to take your land? They don't even understand because they don't even understand how the world works.
Right.
So that's my little thing. But no, this was very concerning. It was devastating at first, but as you walk through it, and you have to have a good attitude that you're going to get a good outcome at the end.
Mm-hmm.
You have to. Do I have any faith in our politicians? No. I think the Conservative Party is trying to alarm people, but then they label them as racist, bigots, and it's like, why? Because they're concerned for their own British Columbian constituents? I mean, my gosh, I just think it's very important for people to educate themselves. And because if it's not affecting you at the moment, it's going to affect you at some time, and then it's too late. If it's gone so far that it's affecting all of BC, it's all too late at that point. We all should be screaming our heads off. We should all be in the streets, but we're not. We're all very polite and talk about it at our dinner parties and go crazy. But at the end of the day, the government has failed us so badly on every level.
After speaking to Angela, we drove down to Richmond to the affected area where her condo is located. The area includes a mix of residential, agricultural, and industrial properties on the south shore of Lulu Island. It is a beautiful place, the type of place that would be ideal for a young couple looking to raise a family or an elderly couple to retire. And while there, everything felt disturbingly calm and normal. But things are not normal because the people living here, their private property is currently in jeopardy. Part 2, how we got here. How did we reach a point where property rights are in jeopardy? And is Richmond just the tip of the iceberg? To find out, we drove to downtown Vancouver and headed to the Canada Strong and Free Network Vancouver conference, where there was a panel on this very issue titled The Future of Private Property in Canada. Now, let's quickly go over a few key terms that will come up throughout this video. First of all, fee simple, that is the standard form of ownership in the world of real estate, where the person who holds the title, the owner of the land, well, it's their land basically. It's land ownership. Crown land is another word for public land. It is a term described for land that is owned by Canada's federal and provincial governments. A land claim is a claim by an Indigenous tribe in where the tribe says it has legal rights to or ownership of a particular piece of land. And treaties are agreements made between the Government of Canada, Indigenous peoples, and often provinces and territories that define ongoing rights and obligations on all sides. And Aboriginal title means the inherent Aboriginal right to land or a territory. One of the panelists on that panel was a man named Thomas Isaac. He is a lawyer and partner at the Castles law firm, where he chairs the firm's Aboriginal law group. And over the course of his career, Mr. Isaac has built a reputation as one of Canada's leading authorities on Aboriginal law. And in an interview with me, he said that what is happening in Richmond is part of a much larger issue.
For a large part of Canada, has been settled in terms of settling outstanding land claim issues by First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. So large swaths of the prairie provinces, large swaths of Ontario, and then modern treaties in northern Canada. But there are still parts of Canada where there are outstanding claims to land by Indigenous peoples. A big hunk of British Columbia, so about 180 First Nations, give or take, have outstanding land claims in British Columbia. All of New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia has claimed parts of Newfoundland and Labrador, parts of Ontario. So Canada's not done in terms of dealing with the land question from an Indigenous rights perspective. And it just is so that British Columbia has a very large proportion of First Nations, 180, which is a massive number of outstanding claims. And If I could just say one other thing, just to put that into context, there are 600 and a bit First Nations in the country. So 1/3 of the First Nations are in one province, essentially, in Canada. So that's why you see such a disproportionate amount of attention to British Columbia. But make no mistake about it, these are live legal issues for the entire country. It's unprecedented. I am not aware of any direct attack really anywhere at any point in time in Canada on indefeasible or fee simple title, like private land ownership prior to Cowichan. And so that's why there's so much attention on that decision. We cannot achieve reconciliation in this country if people's private property can be at stake. So that case is going to be on its way to appeal to the British Columbia Court of Appeal.
There was mentioned in the panel that you were just participating in that the Cowichan doesn't want people's private properties and that therefore maybe we shouldn't worry about this too much. What do you say to that?
Well, look, the Cowichan have said that, and I want to be clear. I respect that. I take it at its face, but they can change their mind. I'm not sure that they have the legal authority to dictate what is Aboriginal title and what is not. I say with the greatest of respect, but I'm not sure that they have that authority. And quite frankly, it is irrelevant to the point of the uncertainty it creates. So whether or not today they are taking action to repossess what the court has said is their land, the fact that they can at any point in the future, and that's what the judge said, that uncertainty is unknown in fee simple, in indefeasible title. It is that uncertainty that is fatal from an economic point of view. We cannot have that uncertainty in a modern economy.
What would be the economic consequences if this stuff doesn't get resolved soon, do you think?
Well, right now, the challenge is that we've got serious uncertainty in the marketplace, not only on the 800 acres and in Richmond, but in British Columbia. Investors are paying attention to this. If the decision were to be upheld, I think it could be potentially catastrophic to the economy. And if we don't protect the concept of private land ownership, we are opening ourselves up to a whole world of hurt from an economic point of view. And that will not be good for reconciliation, won't be good for the economies of Indigenous peoples and non-Indigenous peoples.
Also at the conference and on the same panel was Aaron Peat. He is the chief of the Cowichan First Nation. He's a lawyer and the host of the Nuanced podcast, where he hosts discussion and debates on a range of issues, including Indigenous politics. There's a lot of discussion online about private property rights. I see it a lot about it, a lot of people on X. Are there misconceptions about this issue? And if so, what are those misconceptions, you think?
I think the big one is that nobody's taken anybody's private property rights. That has not occurred. I agree with people who are concerned about mortgage rates and whether or not there's going to be devaluing of the homes in Richmond. But I don't think we've hit that point yet. But it is important that there is a lack of certainty that we start to address that issue from the outset.
As an Indigenous politician, what do you make of the fact that this has become an issue in BC and you have this whole land claims problem?
My criticism is usually just with the successive governments failing to address these issues. This has been a long-standing issue, as many British Columbians and Canadians know, and they've chosen not to, so it's gone through the courts, and the courts have made decisions that British Columbians and Canadians don't like, which I understand, but that's why you need governments to step up and address these issues. And so my hope is that this has shined a light, and we can start having policy conversations on the path forward.
Could this have been avoided if governments had taken actions in the past instead of just kind of delaying and putting it off?
Yes, if you look at Alberta, Saskatchewan, Ontario, they resolved it through treaties. You do not see the same confusion around private property rights in those provinces, so I think treaty is likely the best and most proven pathway out of this.
So in places where there are treaties, homeowners don't need to be concerned in those areas?
Correct.
Can you explain to me, for people who aren't from BC, what is DRIPA?
DRIPA is based on UNDRIP, which is the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. They tried to codify it in a way that would work with British Columbia. They were the first to do so. And the idea behind it was to bring more clarity through the process of trying to do major projects. So you might remember the Wet'suwet'en protests that took place. That was because of a lack of clarity on the relationship between industry and First Nation communities. So the idea was DRIPA was going to help address those issues, bring more certainty, and allow more developments to take place. There's concerns about whether or not that's actually resulting, and there's a few cases that do bring that into question, like the Gitsala case. And so the Premier responded by saying that he was going to amend certain parts of DRIPA and the Interpretation Act. Then he's recently stepped back on that.
Part 3, how to fix this. Now that we've examined how we got here, it is time to answer another question. How can this be stopped before it gets worse? Because there's always a solution to a problem, no matter how big the problem is. I spoke with Scott McInnis. He is a member of the Legislative Assembly of British Columbia and the conservative critic for Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation. How would you assess the way that NDP Premier David Eby has handled the situation?
Confusing, very serious lack of transparency. I think with the Cowichan decision, I think there's just a tremendous desire for the public to learn more about this very, very critical file. But we see time and again that this Premier is trying to keep things from the public. And I really don't think that that's going to be helpful in the situation moving forward, because the public deserves to know what's happening behind the curtain with these very, very important issues. The issues of land management, private property, all of these pieces filter throughout all realms of our province. So it's extremely important that our provincial government is transparent and brings the public along in this journey that they're selling.
One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is because I want their political aspect. I've spoken to lawyers. What do you think needs to be done at the policy level in the legislature to fix the problem that's happening right now?
Yeah, I think there's two important pieces to that. Number one is the transparency piece. So I've actually introduced a bill called the Aboriginal Title Transparency Act, which, if passed, will require governments to publish publicly where claims of Aboriginal title exist throughout the province and where they're currently under negotiation for Aboriginal title throughout the province. In addition to that, they would have to notify potentially any affected private property owners. To me, that is number one, that people deserve to know what's going on. They want to know what's going on. This isn't about creating animosity or pointing fingers. It's actually the opposite, to have an attempt for people to get together and talk about this very critical issue, which is Aboriginal title in the province. But right now, the Attorney General is not required, nor is there a desire to present that information to the public.
Some people have spoken about needing to reopen the Constitution. Do you think that has to happen too?
Yeah, so without being a constitutional lawyer myself, I know that there are ways for which we could look at the Constitution and at least get that discussion started about protecting private property at a constitutional level. Aboriginal title is a protected right to the land in our Constitution. I think it's only fair, and it will lower the temperature for the public if they know that their private property also receives that same level of protection.
Do you think that DRIPA needs to be repealed?
I certainly do. I don't want to discount the fact that we have a very, very serious court decision on the books from December, which required that immediately all laws in British Columbia have to be in alignment with the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. Our Premier has said essentially that is an impossible endeavor. So we have a very serious situation with the way that the Interpretation Act and DRIPA have been interpreted by the courts, which is exactly how the government wrote it and introduced the law. So we have a serious situation on our hands, which must be resolved as quickly as possible. We've seen the Premier kind of introduce ideas for ways to address this, whether it's through amendments to the legislation or a suspension of the legislation, but he seems to have backed away from all of those possible solutions in order to somehow have some negotiation take place with no real outcome to it. So this is very serious, and more than ever, our provincial leadership needs to step up and show that critical leadership at this time.
I also had the opportunity to speak about this issue with Kerry-Lynne Findlay, who is now the new leader of the British Columbia Conservative Party. Findlay has some personal experience with these issues, and that is because in the late 1990s, when she was a widowed single mother, she had acquired a leasehold home on Indigenous land in South Vancouver, meaning that she owned the house but leased the land beneath it from the Musqueam First Nation. At one point, the Musqueam First Nation demanded a massive increase in the annual lease payment, and when the homeowners would not agree. They sued the families in the neighborhood. Findlay says, as a lawyer, Findlay helped lead the case all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada, and she won.
Unbelievable, really, that we should be in this position. And we are squarely in this position because of this NDP government, but also the earlier BC Liberals, because they all voted unanimously to bring DRIPA into our legislation. You have a judge in the Cowichan decision, and it affects our whole province. Even though the place that case was heard was Richmond, it's a BC Supreme Court decision, so that means it applies to our whole province, unless it's changed through legislation or appeal process. That is the only way. The judge said very clearly that neither the federal government nor the provincial government provided any evidence nor took any position with respect to the supremacy of the land title system. And yet, we've had this system in place here since 1861. I looked it up. And we've had the current legislation since 1979. What some people are just starting to understand is that when you see the Crown in these court decisions, the Crown is the government of the day. The government of the day hires the lawyers to make the arguments and gives them the instructions, what to say, what not to say. So we have a situation in BC right now where less than 5% of our population is Indigenous, 95% is non-Indigenous, and the 95% are being told that everything you've worked for to pull together a down payment and qualify for a mortgage, which isn't easy, and pay down a mortgage, hopefully, or refinance, is all in jeopardy now. The average British Columbian, their major asset is their home if they're lucky enough to own one. Maybe they have a car, maybe 2 cars, car and a truck. Don't have a lot of savings. 40% of British Columbians say they're $200 away from insolvency at the end of every month. We have 200,000 people in food banks each month. This is a very serious situation on affordability we have here in BC. So now if you threaten the major asset of most people, it is extremely serious.
Part 4, a bombshell update. On May 28, 2026, the Canadian Press, which is a wire service, ran the following headline. Supreme Court says Aboriginal title can't apply to private land. That decision came after the court refused to hear an appeal on a court decision in New Brunswick involving the Wolastoqey First Nation, and where the Court of Appeal ruled that Aboriginal title couldn't be declared over privately owned land, with a judge warning that allowing such claims would sound the death knell of reconciliation with the interests of non-Aboriginal Canadians. But does this put the Cowichan decision to rest? Well, the answer is no, and the Canadian Press headline is misleading. I spoke with Karen Restoul. She is a senior fellow and director of Indigenous Affairs at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute think tank. She's a consultant, a lawyer, and also the host of the Breaking Nations podcast.
So Karen, the New Brunswick Court of Appeal decided that Aboriginal title could not be declared against private property. The people that were claiming the title tried to appeal to the Supreme Court, but in May, the Supreme Court declined to hear the case. What does this mean for British Columbia?
Yeah, first, I think it's important to understand that the Supreme Court of Canada did not endorse the New Brunswick Court of Appeals decision. And that seems to be a point of confusion for a lot of people. What it did is that it simply just declined to hear their appeal. It said, no, thank you. We're not touching that right now. And so that said, the practical effect is that the New Brunswick Court of Appeal decision absolutely has legal footing. It does stand within the province of New Brunswick. And that decision is significant because the Court of Appeal held that a declaration of Aboriginal title can't be granted over privately owned fee simple lands. And so if you look, for the nerds who follow your show, if you look at paragraphs 192 to 201, it goes over, the court's reasoning on that front. And specifically, it says, in paragraph 192, which I think is relevant, a judicial declaration of Aboriginal title would confer those ownership rights, and I am unable to see how those rights can coexist with the very same rights vested in fee simple owners. And so the New Brunswick Court of Appeal has been very clear that the two cannot simply coexist. And then immediately following that, in paragraph 193, says a finding of Aboriginal title may support damages and compensation against the Crown, but does not itself confer the ownership rights that accompany a declaration of title. And then it goes on, in paragraphs 200 and 201 to expand. Simply the court says, if we were to go about and declare Aboriginal title over fee simple lands, it would be the death of reconciliation. And it very clearly states that. And so why does this matter for British Columbia? Because one of the central issues in the Cowichan case is whether Aboriginal title can be declared over lands that are privately owned. And the BC Supreme Court, which is the first level court in British Columbia, they said yes in their decision. Now, the New Brunswick Court of Appeal says no. And so when we consider what will take place at the appellate level, at the Court of Appeal in British Columbia, now that we have that New Brunswick decision that says the two can't coexist, it will, it certainly doesn't, this isn't, the Wolosticki decision doesn't necessarily apply nationally, but when lawyers appear before the court, they're certainly pulling case law from other jurisdictions that will then help inform the courts in British Columbia.
When this came out, this decision, some people in the media said that this means the BC case is over, private property rights are protected. That's not the case. The Supreme Court is just kicking the can down the road.
Yeah, so what we saw roll out in society generally is that, those who are on the far right of the argument and those who are on the far left of the argument seem to have, read the decision very quickly and brought in, the bits that maybe made sense to support their case. But I think by and large, both ends of the spectrum really overstated their position. The people that are saying that Wolosticki ends Cowichan are wrong because the cases are fundamentally different. And that's simply just not how law works generally. You can't just, issue binding decisions in the abstract. Wolosticki has not yet gone to trial. That's another point that I think matters. Whereas Cowichan was very well exercised. In fact, it's being touted as Canada's longest trial, has been very well exercised, whereas Wolosticki proceeded to the Court of Appeal and then on leave to appeal to the Supreme Court on a preliminary question, on a motion. And so that Wolosticki, the evidence that supports the plaintiff's case, has not been presented, nor has it been tried and tested. And so that matter would still have to go through at the first level. Now, at the same time, those who dismiss Wolosticki entirely are also wrong. The New Brunswick Court of Appeal directly addressed the relationship between Aboriginal title and fee simple ownership. That is one of the most important legal questions raised by Cowichan. And so Wolosticki does not decide Cowichan, but it certainly gives the BC Court of Appeal another appellate court's reasoning within Canada on the very issue that is now on appeal before them. So in short, the New Brunswick case does not end Cowichan, but it's also not irrelevant to Cowichan.
How long do you think things will continue to play out in BC before we have an answer, some certainty?
Yeah, this is the $1 million question. How do we get to certainty? How can well-meaning British Columbians go to bed at night with comfort that, the land that they've worked hard to purchase and own is safe and that there's certainty around it. I think that's a very reasonable concern and question. Certainly, it's hard to find the leaders coming through the fold to reassure citizens that their land's okay. And so I can appreciate all of the questions coming out of the West Coast. But British Columbia still has not resolved the underlying question of Aboriginal title across more than 90% of the province. And for more than a century, government after government after government has largely avoided dealing with this issue. Unbeknownst to Canadians, perhaps, some Aboriginal law lawyers, definitely most First Nations across BC, understood that much of the land in BC has been legally unresolved. But nonetheless, you have the bulk of the population there who's been living largely unknowing that this is an issue. And quite frankly, governments, if they did know, simply were turning their heads the other way. And so in the absence of good governance, of strong leaders, the courts have stepped in. And this is where you see the Calder decision coming out in 1973, Delgamuukw decision coming out in 1997, the Chilcotin decision coming out in 2014, now the Cowichan decisions coming to the forefront. And so each decision in each decade has pushed the issue forward because the underlying question in British Columbia as it relates to land remains unresolved. Now, the treaty process, a lot of folks now know about the BC Treaty Commission these days. The treaty process was supposed to provide a negotiated solution. More than 60 First Nations entered the process there, starting out in the 90s. However, we're looking at 30 years ago now, a little bit over 30 years. Only a handful of treaties have been concluded. And so what I would be watching for now is whether government can create a credible pathway to resolve title outside of the courtroom. I think property owners should continue to watch the appeals very closely, but they should also understand that governments have repeatedly said that they are not looking to dispossess homeowners, which should reassure some. Indigenous nations, on the other end, should be watching whether governments are prepared to move beyond consultation towards, designing a process that actually allows meaningful engagement and discussion in and around land governance, revenue sharing, economic partnership, and whatnot. But governments, I think, play an important role here. They need to be watching the growing gap between litigation and their role as governance leaders in the province. Because if governments can't create a workable solution, a workable process that resolve this question, the courts are going to continue to do it for them. And it's going to be painful for the next decades ahead because it's going to be one case at a time, one case at a time, one case at a time. That's not good for British Columbia, and it certainly isn't good for the country.
I think this is ultimately going to all end up in the Supreme Court. Do you think the Supreme Court will agree with New Brunswick that Aboriginal title can't apply to private property, or do you think there's a chance that it could rule otherwise?
Ultimately, what you're asking me is, what can I see in my crystal ball? And there's a lot of gray in there right now. I'm always hopeful that we can find a resolution that respects everyone's interests. And so you're hearing a lot about rights these days. I would say, all parties around the legal problem in British Columbia and across Canada, frankly, you hear a lot of people who are standing up for what is theirs, talking about their rights. And I'm hopeful that there's going to be leaders out there who recognize that in this current moment, we have to start thinking, what is in the best interest of the country? What do each of us have to show? How do each of us have to show up to this conversation for the benefit of the country? And absolutely, I believe that there's a way to respect everybody's interests, to respect everybody's rights, and arrive at a solution that puts Canada first and allows our country to prosper and grow in the way that it should.
So, to summarize, for years, successive governments failed to negotiate treaties with Indigenous nations in British Columbia over land matters, and in British Columbia, this has resulted in the Cowichan land case, where the BC Supreme Court found that Aboriginal title could apply not only to public land, but also to private property. As a result, property owners in BC, like Angela, have received letters saying their properties may be in jeopardy. The BC government has said they're appealing the decision, and a court in New Brunswick ruled that Aboriginal title cannot apply to private property. That said, the Supreme Court refused to hear the appeal, meaning that this is far from over. However, it will likely eventually make it to the Supreme Court of Canada, and likely it's only then that we will have an answer on property rights. And regardless, this will change private property in Canada forever, because either Aboriginal title will not apply to it, or it does. And in that case, private property will have been undermined in the name of decolonization. And this sums up our investigation, but I have a little request for you. I have a petition calling on the federal and provincial governments to protect private property rights. So if you want to sign that, that will go a long way. And I also want to know what you think, so put your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure you are subscribed. Again, it's free to do so, and it goes a long way. Hype and like the video, hit the notification bell, and consider getting a paid channel membership for less than $5 a month, because these investigations cost a lot of money. This one costed around $2,500, so your support is very appreciative because we don't take a dime in government subsidies. Until next time, God bless.